In this video, I'm going to show you how to install your Adventure King's 1500 watt pure sine wave inverter. Now inverters are great because they take the 12 volt power from your battery and output 240 volt power just like your power points at home. That means you can run all your luxuries from home wherever you are. Now you can use the included wiring to quickly, temporarily connect your inverter to a battery directly or to your battery box terminals. I've made sure the inverter and the battery box are off. Now I'm adding the red wire, then the black wire. Now this is perfect if you just want a temporary installation, which is ideal if you just want to quickly get this together to charge a laptop or something like that. In our case, we have a space in the D-Max here to actually permanently install this inverter, but that's going to require a couple of extra components. If you're doing a permanent install, you'll need a fuse or circuit breaker on the positive cable, and I recommend about 125 to 150 amp fuse for this inverter. Now you can use the wire that comes with the kit. You'll need to cut it and slot this in. But if your battery is a little bit further away, you may also need a little bit of extra wire. The first thing I'm going to do is actually install the inverter onto this panel. That way I can measure out how much extra wire I need to reach the battery, which is hidden away back there. Now I'm just deciding where to actually install the inverter because I know my wiring is going to run down to this back corner. I'm using screws to mount this inverter down, so I've found a little case that's the right height to prop it up to make it easier. So I've fed this wire through and now I've marked it up and I know I need about 1 meter of positive cable. So I'm going to cut this off and add an I terminal at either end. I've previously used hydraulic crimpers for this sort of work. I'm at the shed today and we've got these manual ones. Whatever you do, make sure you're using the right size jaws for your I terminal and you'll get a good crimp. I've given that 3 solid crimps. So next I'm going to add a little bit of heat shrink to protect that bare metal. Then I'm going to repeat that process for the other end. Now you want your fuse or circuit breaker as close as possible to the positive terminal of your battery. So I'm going to show you a cool little tip that I use. I use a mega fuse for a lot of these installs, and it's because they use an 8mm stud, which is exactly the same thread as is used in most of these batteries. Remove one of the bolts and push it out of the bottom. Then I replace it with a stud. I remove the positive bolt and add the stud into the battery. Now you can start to see what the idea is here. I'm keeping the fuse as close as possible to that positive terminal. Once it's installed, my inverter is going to be connected to this end and the fuse is going to be directly connected to the positive terminal of the battery. So I've tightened the stud up with a nut so it's solid. Then I can add my fuse holder. Next, I reassemble this terminal. First, adding a nut. And tightening it up. Then refitting the 2 flat washers, the spring washer, and finally the last nut on top. Now I've left the fuse out because I'm installing the inverter and don't want anything live while I'm working. But you can see that once that was installed, I can simply connect my inverter wire directly to this and everything will click back together. For this setup, I'm going to use the included earth cable, but I am going to shorten it down and add a new terminal. By minimizing the length of the wiring, you're minimizing voltage drop, so your inverter will run more efficiently. So remove the protective covers off each terminal, fit your wires corresponding to the positive and negative, and then tighten them back up with a 14mm spanner before refitting the protective caps. And next up, I'm just going to connect those wires into my battery and then re-add the fuse. You can see here, this is the stud in the positive terminal of the battery. Now I'm adding the positive wire from the inverter onto this end of the fuse holder, as well as my existing power wire. To even up the height difference, I'm adding 1 extra M8 nut on this side. Then I refit all the washers add the fuse and tighten it down. Finally, add the protective cap. Then I've refitted the battery tie-down strap. Now we're good to test out the inverter. There you go. That's how easy it is to neatly and permanently install your Adventure King's 1500 watt inverter in your vehicle, so you have 240 volt power wherever you go.